everybody to the Cornerstone. So this is Cornerstone Entrepreneurial. Um, what is it?
Fundraising.
I know
But we're actually the Cornerstone, and it's spirit-led entrepreneurship is what you're going for.
Spirit-led entrepreneurship. You know what it was? Is that little logo?
It's only the last episode. It's all good. We can forget the name.
Yeah.
Get to the content.
It was the little logo in the bottom corner. I was trying to keep it out because I felt like when we put the banners up, it was covering it a little bit and it didn't look good. So I dropped it, but then I dropped the ball when it came to remembering the name.
Yeah.
So
Good job.
yeah. So welcome to this is the last episode, guys.
Man, this is crazy.
Of our podcast.
First of all, I just want to jump in and say thank you to Dr. Dave for starting this. So a lot of you guys don't know, Dr. Dave reached out to us. He was just led by the Spirit and felt led to reach out to Nick and myself to start this, to show everything business, but we have to remember it has to be in the perspective of Scripture and God's way and his universal truths and everything related to that. So Dave, just thank you so much for putting this together, man.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. That's very kind. And, it really comes down to, we went through this startup accelerator program / entrepreneurial boot camp / networking, event. And what was really interesting is that the whole time I actually was on guard most of the show. Mm-hmm. I was very, I don't want to say reserved in a way, but the whole time we're shooting, I'm thinking to myself, mm-hmm. How much of this is the world going to come at me and tell me the way to do things? And is that truly what God is saying? Mm-hmm. And, again, no shade on Wes. He did a great job of bringing a lot of good content. I think overall, every single person that goes through this program and the show is going to be blessed by it one way or another. But at the same time, he does not go about it in a way that is going to highlight where God would want to take our business and how to operate our businesses. And so it was important for me to decompress and truly look at it from a biblical perspective, the content after the fact. Because during the show, I'm thinking, what's the next assignment, right? Yep. And I'm just going to regurgitate. I'm going to play the game, and that's what I did. But then when I came back and I started using some of the content, started digesting it a lot, what I ended up finding is that it was a very worldly perspective, not bad, just worldly, absent the Father. And then, well, what does it look like to look at this? And that's actually why I invited you both to join, is because whenever two or more are gathered, God's presence will always be there. And, I've always had a hard time with that because God's with me even if I'm alone, But there's something special about having brothers alongside this journey, these last 6-7 weeks now. To discuss what it looks like to take the content that we learned and then, look at it from the Lord's perspective. So I appreciate you guys joining me in this journey for sure.
Yeah, this has been. It was not only was it fun to get to know you guys and go through this experience together on the blocks, but then for us to continue and have this opportunity to get together and discuss our time or reflect on our time. But then also to deep dive into our businesses and recenter our mind on viewing our businesses from God's point of view and recentering our businesses on what are we going to do that's pleasing to the Lord? Yeah. So that's kind of been the ongoing theme throughout this whole thing, is to make sure that you're Spirit led and to pray first. I feel like a lot of times in society, we come against a problem and then we're like, Lord, if you would just take care of this problem for me. Mm-hmm. And, and sometimes it comes with this ultimatum of well, Lord, if you do this for me, then I'll do this for you. Mm-hmm. And that's the wrong mentality. If we pray first, then we won't find ourselves in those positions where it's all right, God, I need you to fix this. Mm-hmm. It's well, I tried to fix it, and I told you not to do that in the first place.
We talked about that a little bit last week with just touching on like having an attitude of action, you know, and not relying on the Lord just to do the things. I mean, we have a part to play in this process of building a business, and our job is to honor Him in all that we do. And if we can do that, then He will honor us with all kinds of great stuff, not only in our lives and our hearts and our personal, interactions with people, but also in our business. That God doesn't look down and say, "Well, I'm not going to touch the business. I'm just going to touch the personal interactions with their family or whatever." That's not how He works. He touches your life, and that means it's going to permeate into your business on a very, very large level. Well, I don't think we need to introduce ourselves. We're already 7 minutes into this. Let's just get going. Right. We're talking, and really what we're doing today is we're talking about early stage fundraising and then a little bit of deal structure. So again, for all the nerds out there that love numbers, this is the day for you. And really, always going back to, no matter what we're talking about, Nick already talked a little bit about being led and praying first, but like, what does it look like to be strategic in your intercession, right? We want to truly be prepared to go to war. That's like one of the roots of the word strategic is the purpose is going to war, winning the battle, finishing the fight. And it not necessarily, and in this case, we can talk about goals and how you go about the things that you want to accomplish, but really, and then intercession is truly, on behalf of, right? And so when we strategically intercede for our business, we are literally being wise and discerning with the way that we go about waging war, and for all you guys out there, that should rally you up, because every time you go out into your business, you can absolutely be saying, I'm going to be strategic in how I go about things.
Yeah.
And you do the same when it comes to finances and whether it's deals. In fact, I have a couple different testimonies on how I've structured deals that have nothing to do with money and thinking outside the box. And I kind of want to preface today by touching just on a quick thing. A lot of people who are maybe believers listening are very familiar with Dave Ramsey, and the whole anti-debt world is out there. And I'm mostly one of them. I'm not a fan of debt. I do believe that the debtor is slave to the lender. There is biblical principle in that. And we should be wary of taking on debt. And so when we're fundraising, a lot of times we're giving up equity or interest rates, or we're borrowing in certain ways, and we're creating deals to bring in finances to start a business. There's nothing inherently evil or immoral about borrowing. I want to make that clear. I think if you look at the heart of the Father, and when we talk about this, it's much more think of all the wise things you can do with money, and think of all the dumb things you can do with money. The money is not the issue. It's where your heart is and what the purpose is.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we're using debt to buy flashy cars and bigger houses and more TVs, the heart is materialistic and, in fact, probably idolatry. But if you're using money and borrowing in that regard, and you're borrowing it specifically to build something that is honoring of the Lord, that is a different case. It doesn't mean rack up debt on your credit card to start a business either. And I'm sure we're going to get into that stuff as well. Nick or Duet, you guys have any comments on that?
I always have comments, but Duet, I defer to you. Go for it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm a huge Dave Ramsey fan. It was like when I first jumped with him, I was kind of, man, this dude is kind of wild, like, how he's
intense. I listened to him for like weeks on end, just like over and over again. He's like, oh, that's a dumb thing.
Yeah. When I first was introduced to him, I was like, oh man. Then even when I drive now, just always listen to his podcast, Spotify and everything, even to the point where, we have that group, the debt-free group on Facebook. But that's the big thing for me is paying things off, being really strategic with funds and money. And I really, really love the debt snowball. And I think that really applies well to business as well. For example, in our household, we don't use credit cards and things like that. Just we had in the past, just didn't work too well, like keeping up with that, and not feeling that the struggle that relates to that and stuff. So we kind of eliminated that component. But yeah, that's a big thing for me to be able to fundraise in a way that's more that's not gonna on the back end have your family in some type of issue. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's cool. You don't use credit cards. I did the whole Dave Ramsey thing, and I never stopped using my credit card. I'm sure I would have spent less money, but taking a $20 bill out and spending it, it does have a psychological zinger to it.
Oh yeah.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
I'm totally using my card.
Take the plastic.
Oh yeah.
Psychologically, it's going to make you not want to do it. You're like, correct.
Yeah. Correct. That is true. So that's right.
That's funny. Well, my thought with all of this was, seek God first in your business. Make sure that you're honoring God in your business. And if you're in the early stages, if you're just an aspiring entrepreneur, make sure that this is really something that God wants you to be doing. If it is, pray about it, and God's going to open the doors where they need to be open. He's not going to make you put yourself into a situation that he's not prepared to come and answer your prayer. So, so there's the scripture, Matthew 7:9, and this is mostly talking about, salvation. But I was thinking about it too. It says, ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks the door will be open. Which of you, if his son asks for bread, will give him a stone? So there's moments in entrepreneurship where you're like, oh no, what's going to happen? And you need to, in those moments, remember, God gave me the permission and directed me to start this business. He's going to be there. He's not going to let me fall flat on my face. As long as you keep honoring him and you keep having him as the center of your business, God's going to open the doors for you. But we need to be mindful that we need to be in his will, and that we don't go and start trying to kick down doors and force our way into a situation. Let God open the door and let him show you where it is that you need to go. If that door's not opening, he didn't want you to walk through it.
Yeah.
So,
what's interesting is when I'm doing business deals, and I'm partnering with different companies and businesses in my area, I'm very, very sensitive about whether there's grace in a place. All right. And then, do I have peace here? And I'll admit, last year I held on to a relationship way longer than I should have, and it probably cost me. I bet there were other opportunities that probably I missed because I was being unfaithful to where I felt like the Lord was leading me. But it was such a good thing for the business. In my head, I'm thinking this is important. I need to do it. But grace was 100% lifted, and there was no peace. And I tried to maybe muster up some grace in there, and it didn't work. I'll ask you this, Nick. So we ask and it'll be given to you. I mean, we are allowed to just ask for anything. Like, why can't we just ask for anything? What is the context for Matthew 7 here?
Yeah, and so here's the thing too, and this is for all scripture, is scripture interprets scripture. So there's more scripture in the Bible than just Matthew 7:7-9. So if you just read this, if you ask, you're going to get it. Well, there's some stipulations on that. It's not just ask for whatever you feel like. You need to be making sure that you are in God's will. But then also in this context specifically, it's saying, if you want God, he's like, if you want me, I'm here. I'm going to let you in. But you need to want me. You need to ask. You need to seek. You need to find. And you need to knock on that door, and you'll be able to come to me.
Yeah, I love how he calls himself a father, because it really changes it. We're all fathers here. And which of you, if his son asks for bread, will give him a stone? And I think there's another scripture says, you being an evil, human, know how to give good gifts. How much more does your Father in heaven know how to give good gifts? And, I think that we have to recognize the heart of the Father. And also, when we're asking for things, we need to be asking the right questions. And I think, that's some of the things that you brought up earlier, Nick, is that if we're asking questions like, hey, Father, I'd love to do this deal. I want a 1% loan for $1 million. Like, you're asking for something, but where's the heart? As opposed to, God, what is your will for this business plan? What is your will for me taking out this loan or asking for this money or talking to this VC? Lord God, where is the heart of this person in which I'm asking to be a partner? Those are questions we should be asking, and those will 100% be revealed if you're listening. And that's another thing too, is you may ask and it'll be given to you, but you might not be you might be oblivious to the fact that it's sitting right in front of you. Last year, I was looking for another physical therapist to hire because I wanted to replace a PT in one of my locations. So one person is going to Baltimore, going to start a third location, and I wanted to replace that person in my second location, and I couldn't really find anybody. I'm like, God, like, please send me somebody. And I actually traveled up to Virginia, hoping to meet a PT that I could hire. And this was like a continuing education course. It wasn't like I specifically went to find it, but I felt like maybe I'll find someone at this class. And it turns out that, as soon as I got there, I looked around the room. I'm thinking, I'm going to find somebody. And immediately God said, look, I already provided the person for you. And it turned out, and it turned out that I had already hired the PT for Pensacola, which is my first location, and I was supposed to take that PT and put him in Destin, right? And so I was asking for something that had already been given to me. Now, I wasn't being neglectful with my relationship with the Lord, but that's when it hit me. That's when I received the message, and it wasn't like God was staying silent the whole time. For a couple months. I mean, he was like, "Hey, Dave, it's over here. It's over here." And I found it. And so I think we need to recognize that we need to be receptive to the word's prompting. We need to be receptive to actually receive what we're asking for. And that takes communion with the Lord, and it takes an open heart, and above all things, like quiet time, just being present with the Lord without distraction. And that's so hard these days.
I wanted to add to what you guys are saying as far as asking God, asking and seeking. I think it's really important to realize that God is a businessman too. His whole thing with the gospel is there's structure to this as far as salvation and bringing people to Christ and know the Lord. And, there's different steps you can take as far as building a relationship and, explaining the gospel and whatnot. But as far as it relates to business too, I like how Jesus actually says, I'm about my Father's business. It's kind of interesting to me to use the word business. That always sparks me as an entrepreneur. But anyway, even when he tells us to write our vision out. So even when, if we are stewards of what he's given us, and he's one who owns all of it, if we come up with a plan, like any type of fundraising plan and strategy, I think it's very significant and important for him that we write it out, what our plan is, how we're talking about intentions, Dr. Dave. Like, what's our intention? What's our heart behind it? I feel we should be writing out, this is the plan, this is what I would use it for, these are the goals for the next 5-10 years, these different things, and present all of that to him. It's kind of like if you're sitting at a business table and you send this and show him, hey, these are the ideas I would have if you would so bless me with the funding needed for this. This is the strategy. And then from that, through our prayer, he may tweak it, be like, he'll speak to us, Holy Spirit will speak to us. Oh, maybe this is what needs to shift around. Or actually, I don't want you pursuing this one. There's one over here. He's going to speak to us, but we should come to him with a plan. I feel like that's why Nehemiah, like we were talking about Nehemiah for a couple of weeks, when Nehemiah went to the king, what the part I love the most is that when he went to him and he asked him, can he go to Jerusalem to help him build the wall? He already had a timeline in place when he talked to the king. He told him, he's like, how long will you be gone? And he already knew. So he had already this planned out. He knew he was going to ask, and he had it laid out already, which is what we should always do whenever we go to anyone who we're going to ask about funding for.
Yep. Yeah. We have to be prepared. We have to. And that's true for any entrepreneur. You whenever you're going into a business meeting, no matter what, you have to know who you're talking to, and you have to know what your goals are. And I think sometimes people do a lot of networking, and they go in there wishy-washy, and they don't know what they're trying to either get or impart. I mean, it can go both ways, and it ends up being very unfruitful conversation about football or something. Whereas, like, that's fine. If that's what your goal is, you're like, hey, my goal is to just build relationship and chit chat. Then that's not necessarily a bad thing. But what you're also doing is you're using valuable time to maybe not get business done, and having a plan in place is going to be really important. Nick, you want to list some of the stage? So in order to let's do this. Let's set the stage. So we are entrepreneurs, and we have a business. We got to know what stage of business we're in, because what stage of businesses that we're in directly correlates to what kind of funding is available to us. That was probably the number one message that Wes had for us on the show for this day was, don't go asking for VC money when you just sold $3 worth of product, right? And it makes a lot of sense. And so we got to know where we are in that stage. And then based on that, what kind of funding is going to be available? And then what are you going to use it for? Because you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't know how to use it, you're going to squander it.
Yep.
Right. And that goes into, I know we're going to bring it up, the story of the talents. I mean, the reality is that we're going to get funding somehow, whether by revenue or by loans or by giving up equity, or we're going to get money somehow. And it might just be pure. Like I've for the most part, my business has been 100% well, not for the most part, 100% cash flowed for the last 3 years. I have not taken out a single loan in my business. And I did that because I recognized the stage of business I was in, and I utilized my finances accordingly along the way. And so let's go through the stages of business so you can kind of understand where you're at. Nick, take it away, man.
All right. So the first stage is just you're an aspiring entrepreneur. You're not actually an entrepreneur per se yet. You are looking to be an entrepreneur. After that is the idea stages. You have something. It's flushed out a little bit more. Stage 3 is you're building, you're testing, you're tweaking. So you are trying to figure out exactly what is going to be your most viable product. Stage 4, you have your product and market fit eclipse, essentially that you're figuring out where you belong in the market. And once you've gotten to that place, then you move into stage 5, which is the growth stage. It's like, all right, I know what I'm offering, people know what I'm offering, and they want it. And now I am starting to really sell it. After that is the liquidation stage. And this, I'm actually a little bit unclear still. It was a while ago we took this class. But the liquidation stage and the corporation stage is like you kind of made it into the big time. Like you're getting ready to sell your business to somebody else.
And we can safely assume that people listening are interested in this podcast. It's mostly the first 2-3 stages worth.
Oh yeah,
for entrepreneurs. The liquidation stage is essentially what you're doing is you're maximizing profit, right? And so when we went through this, what you're doing in the liquidation and corporation stage is you are figuring out a way to cash out and get your own money. That's what you're doing, right? Yeah. And so there are now, I think. And we touched on this a little bit in one of the earlier shows in the week. Are you a small business or are you a startup? Right? And ultimately, a small business doesn't necessarily get to that liquidation or corporation stage, right? Small businesses stay small, and that's what they want to be. That's maybe under 50 employees. I mean, sounds very large for maybe a startup person to think about, but small businesses come in all shapes and sizes. And sometimes in my mind, I'm thinking, what's the purpose? Is what's going to constitute whether you're a small business or a startup. And so, in fact, the way I've talked to employees is you are joining a startup, right? Because my goal is not to be a small business. My goal is truly to be nationwide at some point. And so in my mind, I'm thinking I'm never getting to that liquidation or corporation stage because, well, I'm not going to get to the liquidation stage because I'm not liquidating. But I might get to the corporation stage because at some point we're going to have a corporate entity that's going to be funneling other locations and the whole bit, right? That's different. But when we're talking about like, entrepreneurs kind of going through the couple stages, the most important thing for us is probably those first 5 stages or so.
Yeah, agreed.
And another thing I would probably touch on too is, you mentioned aspiring entrepreneur. I will tell you, and I think, Nick, you didn't mean it this way, but if you have a business license, you're an entrepreneur.
That's true.
Right? You might not be doing anything with it, but that's okay. And I think it's really important to recognize that sometimes you can be an entrepreneur in the idea stage, figuring it out, right?
Yeah.
Touching on this or that. Like, for example, I bet Duet, you were probably doing teaching and training lessons well before you necessarily had, an epiphany is like, I can do this myself and this is how I'm going to structure my business, right?
Yeah, 2014, and then we started this one in 2020. So started doing like a few students here and there. 2014. Yep.
Yeah. And so now, when did you actually get an LLC, or when in that phase?
Yeah. So when we actually started the business, it was 2020, January of 2020. And it was at first just, just under, it wasn't an LLC. We just recently transformed it into an LLC.
Yeah.
But, so that was just within the last year.
So like, in that being said, like I'd still consider you an entrepreneur even all those years. You're just not official, right? And you were in the idea stage, because I'm sure what you ended up launching in 2020 was a lot different than what you were doing in 2024 or 2014.
2014, oh yeah, yep.
Yeah. And what I'm doing now in 2023 is so different from when I started. I was just telling Nick before we got on, I started my business with my car, which came with my wife, by the way. She married me and I got a car and with it. And it's all I got. I had all these assets and she had a car. It's perfect. Yeah. Right. So she brought her car with her and I'm driving that. I've got a table for $150 on Amazon, and I've got a computer with Word documents on it. Yep. That was my business. Mm-hmm. And for the first several months, that's all I had. Okay. And so that was my aspiring entrepreneur into idea stage, because I started brainstorming, okay, how am I going to do this? Right. Mm-hmm. And I started testing those ideas on the back end of that. And I think that's something that we need to recognize too, is that these stages blur quite a bit in the process.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes you kind of move into one and then you rethink and you kind of.
And you got to go back.
Yeah. So.
Because even like, for example, like I feel I'm between, 4 and 5, but there's always times where we go back to 2. I'm about to launch this new component, like you, Nick, you just recently added on the new component to your business.
Exactly.
And then you're building and testing and tweaking that on the back end while you have a product already going on 4 and things are growing in 5. So it's like, this does all kind of, shift around a lot.
Yeah, that's true.
Cool.
And so with all of these different stages, it's important for us to really, self-reflect and be honest with yourself. What stage do I really think that I'm in? I think that this is one of the things that on the show, when we had this challenge, a lot of people struggled with, because they were like, I don't know where I'm at. Some people, it was very clear. Either it was very clear because they didn't really have a business yet, or it was clear because they're like, yeah, I know that I'm reaching the growth stage, so that there was a plethora of people that had it very clear, but I think a lot of people didn't really know where they were. And so when you can self-reflect and really recognize, where am I in this journey, then what kind of funding am I able to go after? Mm-hmm. When you're in those early stages, so we're going to go through a few different opportunities to get funding, but when you're in those early stages, you are more apt to be able to go after like community events. You might be going and doing just like some Kickstarters, or you might be going and just doing some like crowdfunding just on a Facebook page.
Or my personal favorite, asking your grandfather.
Asking your grandfather.
Explain why that's your personal favorite.
Yeah. So at this point, you've had all the time in the world to watch the show, and in episode 6, this was the fundraising that I won my pod, beating out Niagara Nick over there. So that was an accomplishment.
And Juliet, they did us.
That's right. I beat you both.
Me too, man.
All right.
They did the 3 of us dirty. They put us all in the same pod.
Is that right?
I didn't feel it was dirty at all.
They can't take all the Christians out.
Yeah,
that's right.
There can only be one.
So I ended up winning my pod, and the next. So really, after that was the case, the block's off. The question was, here's a scenario. What you need to do is you need to ask for funding and come up with a deal structure for that. And and I was prepared. Honestly, like I was sitting there waiting to I know when I need to do a convertible note. That was my thing. I was like, I know when to do that. And then obviously
the hardest thing was the convertible note. That was like if you got lobbed, the convertible note, you had the information to be prepared for it, but you better be prepared for it.
Yeah, and I think I know which person was supposed to do it, and I don't think we got a convertible note out of the structures.
Yes.
Correct. And so and it was hard. It was a lot. That was the deal structure I was prepared for, because all the others I felt like you can wiggle your way through all of the different options. And my option was you're starting off your business, and I'm your grandfather, and you're going to ask for money. And so and they cut out a lot of, I think, some of the funnier stuff that happened.
The best part.
Which one was that? What do you say is the best part?
The best part was when they pretty much were like, "You don't even come and visit me, David."
Oh, that was D. That was Darwin.
Yeah,
that was Darwin. Yeah.
But you flipped it around so perfect, and you're like, "Grandpa, I think that you have early onset Alzheimer's. I come and visit you every week."
Yeah, and we were just rolling, we were rolling.
Oh, it was so funny.
Yeah,
just the way that it played, and then you pretty much called out his
That's right, because I'm thinking to myself I would never do that to my grandpa.
Yeah.
He would just forget. And so so in any case, my deal structure was, hey grandpa, I'm asking for $5,000, right? What you're not going to do, and just kind of bringing it a little bit back, is you don't go to your grandfather and ask for $100,000 to start your business that hasn't had a single. What's that now?
Depending on who your grandpa is.
Well, if he has dementia, you might get away with it.
Well, and if he's a multi-billionaire, you'll get away with it.
Sure.
That's true.
Depends on who your grandpa is. I don't have that grandpa.
I guess you're right. But in any case, that's what we want to do, is we want to make sure that we're asking the right amount of money for the right kind of people that we want to invest in us.
Yes.
And so one of the things that was also on my radar was, and I think one of the other judges said, "Hey, I feel like that $5,000 is not enough for you. I want to give you $10,000 to do this." That was a trap question.
Oh yeah. Because
one of the things that Wes was very big on is, if they're going to give you money, take it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, and it was just kind of like, yes. And that was it. And I thought that was, I think a lot of people laughed at that, because it was just a simple, sounds great, let's do it, because a lot of times we're going to be starting our businesses, and our family and friends are going to be eager to help us. I don't know necessarily what that looks like, but there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, look, this is kind of what I'm asking for. And maybe it's like a crowdfunding, like you're saying. Maybe it's like $50 from 100 people.
Yeah.
That's I can jump in, Nick?
Yeah.
Yeah. So same thing, like how you mentioned Kickstarter. So for my business on the end as a recording artist, I did 2 Kickstarters. So 2 successful Kickstarters. So one was for $5,000, the other was for $10,000. And even with that, it has to be really strategic as far as like how you're pacing out, who you're reaching out to, how many a day, what the different offerings you're going to, give for that and everything. So the first was to like record a record. The second was to actually go deeper and build a space to be able to continue to record music and whatnot. And again, family and friends, everyone supported. And it's the small things that God multiplies. It's just like everyone's giving a little bit. And I would have a tier printout that I created in Illustrator, just kind of showing, hey, if 100 people gave this much, we'll reach it. Pick which option you want to choose, and you can actually visually see it. They're like, oh, that makes sense. I'm going to go with this one. And you get just enough people in that category, and then you hit it. So, yeah.
It's really good. So now we kind of understand our stages a little bit. Let's just talk a little bit about kind of what the next step here is. Once you so the next thing too that you can consider with you're asking for cash is bartering. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I'll do this and you do that, because first of all, my personal favorite reason why you can do this is because there's no money exchange, so there's technically no taxes being given or taken. You can save yourself a lot of time and money. Like if for example, let's say I want to rent out a space at a local gym for $1,000 a month. That's $12,000 that I got to pay out. But that's $12,000 is revenue for the gym owner. What if instead of that, I offer something equally as financially beneficial, like PT services of some kind, to his gym, but I don't pay him cash? Well, now I'm not going to have to worry about paying taxes on the $12,000 to earn it, paying him $12,000 and paying him in taxes. And if you guys are business owners, I know there's some tax cuts out there, but I will tell you, payroll taxes are expensive. These all can technically be write-offs, but you're still paying taxes on the front end. And I think that's something to consider, just being savvy about that. But bartering is a really great way to really start things off. Nick, Juliet, you guys ever barter?
I've had a few different situations where I have. This one that comes to my mind, it kind of started off as me paying for a service, but it ended up turning into a bartered service. But you guys know Brian from Pro Mobile Advertising. And so it started off as me paying for having my ad run in Times Square. They're going to shoot a video of it. So it's like, whoa, look, Explore Niagara's in Times Square. They made the big time. So I was doing that with him for that social proof video. But what ended up happening is, because I was the first person to make that jump, that leap, and be like, hey, I see the value in this. I believe in you, and I want to do this with you. He's now using my video as his commercial. So when he's pitching this to other people, he's using my video. So not only am I had that time that I was at Times Square, not only do I have a video that I can use for social proof and say, look, we're in Times Square, but now he's showing other people, look at the brand that we got. We got Explore Niagara to be working with us. Look at all the exposure we got for Explore Niagara. So we ended up working out a deal where he's using that. It's giving me promotion. But yeah, so that was a pretty good barter. I have another one too, so now Explore Niagara is kind of this marketing engine for Niagara Falls, showing off what there is to do on the U.S. side. And one of our partners, they said, hey, we're no longer going to charge you. We just want you to put us on your website. So we're completely getting one of the portions of our tour completely for free. It's sizable. It's $10 per person deal. And they're just like, you market us, we're going to give you free food. So
there we go.
On our chicken tour, I'm not going to tell which partner it is, but you're going to be getting some free food.
I love it.
But you got to pay for it. So
yeah, awesome. And I have bartering right now with an individual who has a kind of like a media company where they support and help you with your social media accounts and things like that. Because I have so many social media accounts, I was like, I need a couple of these for someone to kind of help manage these, so I can just focus on producing and creating and all of that. So I have someone who handles two of my accounts, Starving Arts Courses and Pain Dual, or rather Creative Encounter, my ministry. So they help to manage those. And what I do for them is like maybe like once a month or so, do like their photos or do a shoot with them for them to have things to post on their social media.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so like in one sitting, we'll just take a bunch of shots. They can just kind of post with some quotes and things like this. Or if they want to do a reel later and stuff, they have that footage already kind of on deck and things like that. So,
yeah, that's great. I didn't even pay for my website because which is pretty sweet because it's a pretty banging website. And what I did was I was treating a friend for free because I was like, I'm not charging you, like I'm gonna take care of this. And he's like, whenever you start your business, because this was kind of before I even started, he goes, when you start your business, you let me know, I'll build you a website. Okay. And I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know what kind of value I was going to get. But that's several $1,000s worth of like, building out like a WordPress website. Oh, it was great. I made out pretty big, and he totally took care of me. And so like, that's a really great example of just easy, taking care of your friends. They're going to take care of you, and services are really easy to barter with too. So another thing that you can do is obviously grants and pitch competitions, things like that. Traditional accelerators. These are all things that are going to be available to us to start. But I before we get into some of the higher high net worth individuals and some of the bigger things, I want to point out that just from a pure standpoint, like from a business standpoint, there is no reason why you can't start your business. I don't care who you are or what you're doing, with a minimally viable product that is low cost. Like, it doesn't matter. Look, Duet didn't need the banging $10,000 studio to like teach people how to play piano. You just don't, right? Nope. I did not need an office and all the gym equipment and all the flashy technology and whatnot. We just don't need that, right? What you do need is a vision and a path to what you want it to be. And so I think there's a difference between saying, hey, in 5 years, I want my business to look like this, but until then, it looks like this. Yep. And that's okay, right? I think we need to recognize that going out and asking for $100,000 without anything being sold is, one, probably unrealistic, but then two, not wise, right? Yep. Start with something minimal. Start with something basic. I was actually counseling a friend of mine who's starting her own, mobile haircut business. And she's like, "Oh, you're mobile. I'm mobile. Can you talk?" I'm like, "Absolutely." And she's like, "Well, I want to do color and I want to do all this thing. I don't know where to bring it." And I'm like, "No. Here's what," because you can cosmetology. You can get into all kinds of stuff. Like. Duet and I, we don't know any better, but
I mean, I'm trying to get that. I'm trying to get that same color as yours, though.
Red?
Oh yeah.
Or gray? Which one?
All right, mix it up.
Mix it up. That's right. Well, and so in any case, I was like, no. Start with simple men's cuts. Like, you don't need all the flashy colors. You don't need all the extras. Scissors, a chair, and a dust buster. I mean, that's it, because you're going to go into people's homes, dust that thing up and call it good. Don't mess with too many things. And she goes, "Oh, wow. Like, you don't want to do any extra things?" I'm like, "Well, are you prepared? Do you know what kind of equipment you need? Do you want to buy?" Like, she was thinking about buying a van, showing up out front. And I'm like, "Well, that's going to cost you $30,000.
Yeah,
like,
work your way up.
Do you really want that?" "Oh, well, no. Walk in their house, set up your chair, take out your scissors, and go snip. You're done, right?" And she goes, "Oh, wow, that's really simple." Yes, exactly. Now, use the cash flow of your business and save up for the van if that's really something you want to do. Don't go out and borrow all this money that you don't know if it's going to work yet, right? That is some of the wisdom that I think that we can impart to people who are truly. And this is something that, like, I bet you. You can pray about before you start your business and say, "God, what's the roadmap? Yeah. Where do you want me to go? What's the vision that you have? And then how do you want me to start? Yeah. Do you want me to attack from the front, or do you want me to attack from the rear? Yes, no. Okay, you want me to do it this way. All right. You do it, you start it. God, what now? Would you like me to buy a van yet? No. Okay. Keep going. God, I have an extra 10 grand now. Should I buy a van? Yes, no. Right? Every step of the way.
Yes, it's like, yes, every step, like we have to interact, converse with him, ask him questions, just have that intimate relationship every step. Do we won't miss a beat? Like Nick, like you're alluding to at the beginning, you won't miss a beat. It's like, now I'm here confused. It's like, yo, we follow his step every step of the way. He'll help us through it. Even when we started this thing, we literally just had an iPhone. Like you need to watch the quality of the evolution of the videos on our channel from the beginning. It was like, dude, just an iPhone, put that on the camera, start teaching, dude. And now at the point, we've been able to save and get to the place now where it's like, hey, now we have, different types of cameras and gears and things like that, mics and whatnot, all of that, But yeah, just starting off, I would go to Boost Mobile, get the phone, but not have to get a contract or any type of payments or anything on that. Just the phone, for the sake of getting the awesome camera off the iPhone, and we just kind of started with that in the tripod,
And that's what's important with that minimal viable product is like you got to be bootstrapping. You can't be going out and just being like, oh, I'm going to blow a bunch of money. Yeah. And because what a lot of people do wrong is they try to be all things right away. And you really just need to be one thing and do it well. Like we're the #1 walking tour in Niagara Falls, but we're not yet the #1 tour company in Niagara Falls. I niched down onto walking tour, and I mastered that. I became the best at that thing. And so this is an episode from season 4, but talking about niching and just really tackling being the best at one thing. Because when you're the best and you establish yourself as the authority in that one specific thing, now you have the liberty and you have the trust of people to start to move into other things. So you gotta start small and then build. And I think that's kind of where a lot of people struggle. And that's where some of this funding comes from. They're like, well, if only I had 100 grand, then I could go and do this, and this, and I could be all of this. But you need to sometimes remember what that grand vision is. Remember what your Disney World looks like, but you need to start with one park. Yeah. You need to start with one spot, one thing. Yep. You can't just immediately jump to the grand thing.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think Wes used the Donkey Kong analogy for something like this, where it's like, look, you know, back in the day, there was this game called Donkey Kong where you had all the other stuff you got going on. Yeah. And essentially, it was just level upon level. You just got to climb the ladder. But then you got to get through a bunch of obstacles while on that level, too. And then you got to the ladder that you can get to level 3 and so forth. But like you have to go through the obstacles of each level in order to really solidify. And in my mind, the way I see it is that we're not just like getting through the obstacles. You're learning how to handle level 2 obstacles. Because if you can't handle level 2 obstacles, you're not going to handle level 5 obstacles. And so it's really important to, understand how to do this so that you can do this.
Yep.
If you've got a hole, if you're trying to do this and you got a hole here, it's going to collapse.
That's it, man.
And I would say even like that time when you're first starting your business and it's difficult and you're bootstrapping and you're trying to figure out what you can do, that time is so vital for your longevity of your business. Because people that have things handed to them don't have the appreciation. Where if you work your tail off and you do everything that you need to do to get to a certain point, you're going to be so much less likely to let go of your business or to let things slide. Or you're going to have a higher standard because you'll be like, I need this to have a high standard because I've poured my life into doing this. And so there are no shortcuts. Investors want to know that you've put in the work and that their investment isn't just a part of your pipe dream. So you need to show traction and you become more investable the longer that traction is taking place, because they're going to see that you have put the work in.
Yeah, and then, you put on top of that, like, even if it's not deal structure we're talking about money wise, but like even just putting in the work to create the right environment and is really important. If I wanted to, I could have spent a lot of money and built a business on Facebook ads. That's not, you can do it. But for my business, it's not as sustainable because it's a high volume amount of people, but a lot of them fall through because they're not the right client. What is much better with a cash-based physical therapy practice is networking and relationship building. And so if I'm starting off trying to being all the things and like putting myself out there on, like, let's say the internet, it would fall through without the foundation. But building a foundation of word of mouth and networking and relationships and like referral partners and things like that, all of a sudden now I can build and say, okay, I'm going to use some ads on top of that, as opposed to starting with ads and having a shaky, shifting sand underneath my business because I'm relying on a $2,000 a month ad spend, right? Like that would be a very shaky business model. And you can think about that all the way through.
Yeah, a big thing. I'm gonna jump in here. A big thing to kind of show people what not to do that I would do from the beginning is I knew we wanted to do 3 things with our business: was to do the YouTube lessons. So let's go ahead. That's the free content for you to be able to just access and learn music right there. Then have some one-on-one lessons, but then also have the component, because it's courses. That's the name from that came from. We literally want to have actual recorded courses for our business. So those are 3 things. But we jumped in hard with cranking out the YouTube lessons and doing the one-on-one lessons. Had a bunch of students flowing and stuff. But then it's like, man, actually, I'm seeing I don't have time in between shooting the YouTube and doing the one-on-one lessons to actually record and shoot these courses, which is what that was like the main part of the business. So we had sent out an email, everyone saying like, hey, we're pausing for a bit so we can focus in on getting some of these courses actually done. But just really kind of like laying out the vision of like, hey, these are all the things that we want to do for this business. We're looking at it and be like, step by step, which one do we want to do first? Or which ones can we do simultaneously, but it's still sustainable? You don't want to be overwhelming yourself. So that's a big part. Then we have all that laid out. It's nice that you can already go ahead and like reach out to individuals who may want to support. It could be having individual support to be on your team, or people to help to fund. Hey, this is the gear that we're going to need to be able to shoot these, or different things like that. Kind of show them these steps that you're at, and see who wants to support financially.
There you go. All right, let's talk about some deal structures and tools that you can use while talking to people. So essentially, now that you know where you are, and really just to kind of recap, if you're in those earlier stages, you're not going to be getting VC money or angel money, right? You're probably looking at family and friends, maybe the rich doctor down the road who wants to diversify some assets, and wants to hit it big on an equity in a business. And so there's different, but for the most part, if you're starting out, you're looking at smaller dollar amounts, and you're looking at deal structures that might look something like gifts, or an interest-free loan. You might be looking at just an interest loan, right? Like a personal loan from a friend. You might actually be finding people who want to have a little bit of skin in the game and have some equity. And so the wisdom I have for someone who wants to give away equity is be careful who you partner with. In my mind, I'm thinking of it as a marriage, right? It's that serious. If you want a business partner that owns equity, you have to recognize that if you're giving away equity, you truly are, you got to clearly have defined terms. If you're the sweat equity and they're the financial equity, maybe it is 50-50. But then you still got to know who's got 51 and makes the final decision, right? And those are kinds of things I feel like people can get in trouble with. Another thing to consider is, and this is, I think that was actually one of the test questions I had with my scenario with my grandfather was, you never want to persuade or sell, and one of the questions that I think it was Steven that asked me is like, well, what if you fail? What if you lose all my money?
Mm.
And the easy answer would have been like, I'll find a way to pay you back, and but the reality is I had to turn around and say, hey, grandpa, like I might lose it. Matter of fact, not emotional in any way. And this is the risk. Grandfather, I'm asking you for $5,000 and I'm asking it as a gift. And I might blow it. What if you disappoint me? I think is the question that they asked me.
Yeah.
And I said, look, I might disappoint you, but I'm not going to disappoint you with my effort, right? I'm going to go out there and I'm going to crush it. And you're going to be proud of what I do, even if I don't make it, right? That was the scenario in which I was in. And I think we need to recognize that, is that there's different deal structures that are up to that point. You guys want to have any comments on like equity? I don't think either of you have given up equity to anybody, have you?
No, I haven't.
Mm-hmm.
This was on a different season. It was talking about like deal structures for if you are giving equity to other people. I know that we talked about it a little bit and actually it was this lesson. We talked about it a little bit too, as far as giving up equity and how you can do that with like a vesting schedule, and that there's different structures that you can do to make sure that if you're giving something, you are kind of de-risking yourself, because what you don't want to do, this is at least with vesting. So there's a difference. Vesting is when somebody is giving of themselves, their own time. Then there's investing where somebody is giving of their money. So there's investing where you're doing that, but when it comes to vesting and you're taking on a partner and you're making some sort of a deal structure, you have to be careful that you're not giving them a ton of equity and then you have debt equity and they're not doing anything for your business anymore. Or today we're talking more about investing where they're giving you your money. So you have to be mindful of what is your business worth, but also what do they think your business is worth? Because if you don't agree on what your business is worth, then they're going to give you, $5,000 for 50% of your business. And you're going to be like, no, $5,000 is worth like 0.2% of my business.
So Duet, if let's say you don't agree on the valuation of the business, what kind of deal structure should you use?
Oh man, you hit me with that. All right, let's see. Okay, what kind of deal structure?
Not in my notes.
Right.
It's not in my notes. I'll tell you what, Duet. Nick and I were just talking about this before we came on. You missed it. We called you out, and good thing you did not win your blocks, because you could have gotten this question.
Dude.
No, he wouldn't have. He would have gotten Grandpa because he was in our.
You would have won.
I would have gotten the Grandpa. Oh yeah, I definitely know how to talk to Grandpa. So I would.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, if you disagree on the valuation of the company, you're going to use a convertible note, right? Mm-hmm. And instead of going into the icky details of what that looks like, you guys go ahead and research that and find out for yourselves. But it's another way to take on some money while at the same time giving up equity, but not necessarily agreeing on your valuation of the company, right? And that really kind of took us to the end of some of those deal structures that you can use. And I think one of the most important things to recognize is where are you? What is available to you? And then how are you going to use it? And if you have those three questions answered, you're in a position where you can start asking for money if you truly need it. But then again, all of that is overshadowed by my concept, or not mine, but our concept of the MVP, the minimally viable product. What can you do without money? There is something you can do without money. Like even just doing, like, if you're, for example, you guys are doing classes and the courses that you can buy, correct?
Right, exactly.
Now, what technology are you using for that?
So Final Cut Pro.
Okay, and that costs money, I'm assuming.
Yeah, just one-time purchase, $300.
Okay, so let's pretend you're just starting off and you don't have $300. You can create this stuff on YouTube.
Exactly.
Free
Then
of charge, right? And you don't have to have equipment. You can use your phone, right? And then all you have to do is send you can have these videos as like a private link that they can view, but it won't be searched and found, right? Exactly. And so we just started Duet's business with $0 down. All you need is some time to create the stuff, right? And so
chances are, if you're doing a music business, you already owned the instrument that you were planning to teach. So that's helpful as well, because you're not going to teach somebody how to play guitar, because you're not going to know how to play a guitar if you didn't have a guitar.
Right.
So
this is probably sacrilege, but you can get a piano keyboard for like $25 on Amazon too.
I'm about to delete you.
I told you I thought it would be sacrilege. That's right.
How dare you?
Guitar Center and shoot your video there.
Yeah, man. Well, that kind of concludes a lot of the teaching that we have for you guys. I know we wanted to take a few minutes to kind of wrap things up with like the blocks. And I will say this: if you haven't watched it, it can be dry. It's not something that you're going to watch and be like, oh man, I was enthralled the whole time. But what you are going to do is, if you do watch it, you're going to get some snippets of really great information about the different topics that we covered here on the Cornerstone. You're going to get it without necessarily the lens in which God would probably want you to look at it through, which is okay. It's just a part of the world. But there's a lot of great pearls of wisdom and nuggets that are in there that's going to give you some of the background of what you need. The Bible is not a tool to build a business on, but it is a tool to build the foundation of your business. And I think that matters. The Bible, the book of the wisdom books, the way that Jesus spoke about certain things, all throughout Scripture, all Scripture is good for teaching. And edifying. And you can do that with your business as long as it's a foundational thing. But obviously the Bible's not going to talk about what a convertible note is. It's not going to talk about how to start a website. It's not going to talk about these things. And so we do need to go into the world. We need to seek out mentors. We need to seek out people who are going to be able to speak into us. And at the same time, there's so much great YouTube content. We're just one of billion different options that you can have to figure out what it looks like to start a business. And I would encourage you all, if you haven't started a business, I don't know if you guys probably agree with me. There is an entrepreneurial spirit that is rising in the church and in our country. And do you sense that at all?
I feel it. I mean, I'm doing it, and I see in Niagara Falls, on the U.S. side, there's such a driving force for just progress and change. And I mean, I'm just talking about Niagara Falls specifically. So, but I don't know. Maybe it's not just here, but it's definitely here.
Yeah. Oh no, I think it's everywhere. I really do.
Yeah, I feel especially since the pandemic, a lot of people have been really.
That's what I'm referring to. Yeah, that pandemic really changed a lot of people's lives. They're like, wow, things can be shut down and I don't have control. And there's a difference between having control. There's a difference between not having control on purpose so that God can, drive, versus not having control because other imperfect humans are controlling your life, right? And that's really what's important. Is one of the best benefits of starting your own business is absolutely having the position to create the environment and the ethical things that you want to do for your business. I know a lot of people don't like their jobs, not because the job is bad, but it's because of the leadership, it's because of the culture, it's because of the morals, it's the unethical things that the businesses want to do to increase profits and revenue. And that's where a lot of people's gripes are with work. But if you take a lot of that out and you change it and say, look, I'm in charge of creating all that, now all of a sudden it's not work anymore. It's a strategy. It's a game. It's a thing that you do because you love it. And then, oh, by the way, you get paid for it too.
Yeah. I was just talking about this with one of our employees today. She was in my office, and just we've created this like culture that we're like a family in our business, and we work together and we joke together, and we're not so rigid that that like you can't be yourself, but we're not so loose that we're not getting any work done. But that's important to me, is that we are giving people opportunities that typically didn't have opportunities. Maybe they didn't have the greatest work history in the past. But my saying as a tour guide is, if you can interview well, then you can be a good tour guide. And sometimes people that interview really well, they don't necessarily look the greatest on paper, because they went from this job to this job to this job to this job. You typically don't want to hire that person. But I've found that when I'm treating people the way that God wants me to treat them, the people are not leaving. In fact, I've only had one person leave my company at all. And the reason is because he got a job in Florida, because his wife got a job in Florida. So they moved to Florida. So you guys stole my guy, Dave.
Yeah. Well, Florida's a great state, sunny and warm and cozy.
And now he does physical therapy.
Yeah. If he's a physical therapist, let me know. I'm hiring. So let's wrap it up. Duet, what are some final thoughts that we want to talk? So let's talk about the end of the show. What are your takeaways, and what do you got?
Man. Okay, so the show was just an experience, man. 1 week to create this hub of just a new family, because you're just surrounded so many like-minded individuals, everyone just on the same page, just supporting each other. It was just so much love and support in the room. It was absolutely amazing. Loved it. Loved the networking and the opportunity. But a big thing for me is just get started. Just go for it. Like, if you have this vision, just run after it. Make sure that you are writing out the vision, like the scripture tells us to do. Make it plain. Don't be,
Nehemiah.
Yeah, you just got to write it out, and just go for it. Because there's so many things we're like, I'm just going to wait until this is perfect. I'm waiting a few years. Remember that people are waiting for what you can offer. If God put this in you, it's because he sees someone in Pensacola. He sees someone over there that you are going to be a blessing to, and he wants that person to be reached. So you have to execute on what he's calling you to do. So just go for it. Have fun with it. Don't be afraid. Ask us any questions. We are here for you guys. But yeah, it's just an awesome experience,
Wow. Nick, what you got?
I definitely agree with what you had just said about go for it. When I went to go start my business, I was working for another company, and my wife was just kind of like, well, can't you just, work another year for them, and then maybe we'll do this down the road. And I kind of just had to explain, like, there's never going to be a right time to start the business. And maybe COVID was the right time to start the business for a lot of people. But typically, other than like world...
Somebody decided to wait for a pandemic, but who knows?
Yeah. But there's never going to be a right time. It's kind of like there's never going to be a right time to start a family. Like, if you're waiting for the perfect moment to start a family, you're going to be some childless people for a very long time. Yep. But the same with the business. There's never going to be the right time to do it. So that means that right now is the right time.
What's interesting is I think that's like I think I heard Alex Hormozy say something like that. I love his content. If you guys are entrepreneurs and you look him up, he's got a lot of great content he's putting out. And he's like, like, if you wait for the perfect time, like, it's true that, a good tide lifts all ships, or a high tide lifts all ships. But the problem is like when that tide rolls in and there's nothing there, and let's say the hard times come about, the businesses that were just doing well because of the sake of everyone doing well, something like stocks, they're going to be exposed, right? And so if honestly, if you think this is the hardest time to start a business, now's the perfect time, because if you can start during hard times, you will be hardened to the difficulty. Mm-hmm. And then when it gets easy, you're like, wow, it's easy. But then you at least know if it's hard now and you start now, you can do it well while it's hard.
That's
actually, I love the way he put it in a lot. I bet you can find it on YouTube. It's a lot better than what I just said.
Mm-hmm. And what's his name?
Alex Hormozy.
Alex Hormozy.
Yeah, he's just he's a venture capitalist now, I think, but he actually started Gym Launch, and he's done a couple other things, but yeah. But anyway, all that to be said, is there anything else, Nick, you wanted to say before we kind of wrap up?
I guess ultimately, when you're starting a business, your first and foremost priority should be taking care of you and your family, but also, first and foremost, should be honoring God and like, what can I do for God? But then also for His people. I try to be super mindful with our business. Every good idea that I've had for our business, it's all been bringing us closer to an outcome that is helping this city, helping these people. And I feel a burden for my city. Like, I care so deeply for the people that are here and for the situation that they've been put into by living here. And I'm trying to create opportunity for people, not only if it means working for us, but I'm actively working on getting more people to come and view Niagara Falls and vacation here, so that the restaurants are busier, the attractions are busier, the hotels are busier, turning it into a year-round destination. So I'm trying to make a point to change things and change my situation.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what this is all about, is making a change for the kingdom, for myself, and for anybody else that I have the ability to touch.
Yeah, love it. Awesome.
Yeah, I think that's really what it comes down to is what's your vision, right? And what's interesting is somebody told me a while back that if you want to retain good talent, you really want to have a vision that they can fit their vision for their lives into, right? So if your vision is here, but their vision's up here, they're going to leave you to go do something bigger, better, and it really hit me. I'm like, oh, like I don't want to, and in my industry, it's probably a lot different than your guys's, and I'm sure a lot of people's, where there's a lot of training that goes into making excellent therapists. It's not easy at all. It's time consuming, and it practically kills me. And it's really, really hard to at least bring someone up into the level which I think we should be operating at. And because of that, training someone and then losing someone it's a gut punch. And so my mindset is, I actually need to raise and elevate my vision for my business so high that when I do attract that kind of talent, which I have, I can actually keep them in my business so that they are comfortable living out their vision for their lives, which it could be monetary. It could be just what they're doing for the business. It could be where they're living. There's lots of different factors that go into what their vision is. I want to work X amount of hours, make this kind of money doing these kinds of things, right? Oh, well, we have a pathway for that in our business program, or we have a pathway towards that. Can you run it out for me this amount of time, and then you'll be eligible for this business, opportunity. And I think that that's something that's really important that you touched on, Nick.
Yeah, Dr. Dave, something that's something that stood out about you. That I remember one point when you were saying you just really want to be there for your family, be able to have that time to get back to be with, take care of your family, all that stuff. That was something that really spoke to me on that last day. And I think it was after that when we connected, I was like, oh, he's a believer too. So it's like that moment that really just kind of gravitated me toward you, and I feel like God's hand and favor was just on you, man. Because even at the end of the day, Dr. Dave was the one who won, y'all. Man, we are in the midst of a star here.
Do you have your award?
It looks kind of puny, but I'll show it to you. It is a Blocks.
Yeah,
and that's it. And you can't see it probably on the show here, but
it says stuff on there.
It does say stuff, and it says the best startup on the Blocks. And apparently was the best on the blocks. And yeah, I appreciate that, guys. And
yeah, congrats, man.
I'm all those. I might just have to go back and get one.
There you go. Go get your blocks. I didn't go to win. I really didn't. In fact, I was surprised I was even in the running the whole time. I mean, you know what this did for me, and this might be true for a lot of people. I'm a clinician. I was not trained in business in any way, shape, or form. I literally got my business degree on YouTube, and prayer. That was it. And that being said, like I went into the blocks thinking I got all these people that are coming in. They're all business owners, and I don't know about intimidated was the word, but certainly wowed by the type of people that were on our season 5. Like there was a lot of really great seasoned business owners and startup, minds. And for me to go there and then be like, okay, I gotta take my muscles and joints and put those aside and start talking about, business structure and SEO and branding and copyright and all this stuff. I'm like, okay, I gotta learn this stuff. It was, I think the one thing that stood out to me the most was this, that I went there, I didn't look silly. And on top of that, I won. And I thought to myself, wow, I actually do belong here, and that kind of dawned on me that I'm like, okay, like, I'm not like one of those people that's like, oh, I need the confidence, and that's not who I am.
Guys still use it for affirmation.
That's exactly right. Like I really kind of when I left there, I'm like, oh my gosh, I won. Like it's not that I just went there and I fumbled along and I endured, and I came in second or third or fourth place in my pod a couple times. No, I went in there and I took the information, I digested it, and I performed in a way that actually showed I knew stuff.
Yeah.
And then, but here's the thing, and this is what I'll say one last thing about this, and I appreciate you guys bringing it up. Okay, I won a piece of glass. Okay, all right, now look, and I won a bunch of points where you ever guys watch Whose Line Is It Anyway, where the points don't matter?
Yeah.
That's how I feel. I really do. I'm glad I won because I get to say I won. They're very good. But then I'll tell you right now, every single person who took the information that they took in those 5 days that we were there, the 7-day total trip, everyone who took that information went home and applied it. They're the winners.
That's right.
They're the winners. I don't care who you are. You could have been last in your pod every single day because entrepreneurs are not created on stage in front of cameras. They're created in their man cave, in their she shed. They're in there. They're doing the work right there with a spreadsheet in front of them, just doing the freaking work. And if you can't do that, you're not going to be a good entrepreneur. I don't care who you are.
That's it.
And so, I say all that, mic drop. That's it. Guys, it's important for everybody to realize that.
Well, I mean, you and I were hanging out all week. You and I quickly figured out that we were believers. And so you're actually the very first person I met. We ran into each other when we were getting the luggage off of the tourney thing that brings your luggage.
Nice.
The journey thing.
Yeah. So
you forgot the name of our show.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we ended up hanging out quite a bit in the lobby, talking. I think we talked a lot about our families and I think board games.
Yes.
A bunch. And we didn't talk about board games the rest of this whole week, but yeah, I mean we did, and it was a really good connection all week. I really felt like we studied together, we learned together, we networked together. Again, that was actually one of the best things about this whole process was truly connecting with people. Obviously, you guys, brothers, but a lot of great minds. There.
Oh, I mean, the people that were there were amazing, and like all three of us, we were in contention for that winning. There was several people, even in just our pod. It really was coming down to whoever won our pod, assuming it was one of the people in contention. If like some random person that hadn't won before, they won that pod, okay, well then our pod wouldn't have won. But there was us, there was Beto, she was right up in there.
Yep.
There was another one. Who were the other ones that were in our pod?
In our pod, we had
I think Dr. Kristen was in ours, right?
Yes, the neurodivergent teacher.
Yeah,
so
she was killing it.
There was the 5 of us that if any one of us had won our pod that day, this thing was ours. And so it was pretty awesome to be with such amazing people throughout the week, and to kind of go up against each other in that last day. That was awesome.
Yeah. I want that glass though. Everything you guys have said the last 6 weeks, that's all cute and nice, but I want that glass. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
That's right. Well,
go back.
You have to go back and get one.
Yeah.
This one's mine.
Yeah. So what can we tell our fans here, our followers, our subscribers? What's the future for the blocks? Nick, do you want to share anything or?
Yeah. So I didn't know if I was going to say this or not. So I did go back for the blocks. So you will see me
season 8.
Season 8. Yep. So
right
for me in season 8. I can't tell you how I did, but
I know how he did. You want to know, guys? You want to watch so you find out.
Yes.
Yep. And then you might see myself and Dr. Dave in the future, possibly.
That's right.
Yes. Yes, they invited me back. You know what's interesting? They invited me back, and I actually asked Wes. I'm like, why?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I'm like, what do I got to prove now? I won already. Like now I got to defend my title. And I'm like, is it real? And you know what he said? He said, we're inviting people back who we know is going to help build culture. Mm-hmm. And that's who you want to do business with. And I felt that was a really great response. I don't think he was just blowing hot air. I think he really did mean it. And so for those of us that are going back, and it's not just Jouette and I and Nick, but a bunch of other people are going back from our season and other seasons in future seasons. And when they're going back, they're not going back as, I'm going to try again to win. They're being invited back, and they're being invited back specifically because they're going to build culture in a way that's going to benefit others and edify others. And actually, look, Jouette, I think we're on the same season 10, right?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Look, I'm not going to lay down. Like you're my enemy now.
Right. We'll do another podcast. Enemies.
I'll tell you, I'm not going to just lay down, but. Just like this last time, I didn't go to necessarily win. I went to learn and truly network with others. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go back again. Now I have an extra charge. Now I know what I'm doing. I'm going to go and edify. I'm going to build up, and I'm going to teach. I'm going to instruct. I'm going to help people do better, because ultimately, if I want people to do better and I still want to win, I got to elevate myself, right? And that's the way I know, Jouette, you got the same mindset. We're going to go back, but we're going to go back and we're going to edify. We're going to build up. We're going to instruct. We're going to really help some of the rookies, I guess, in a way to truly understand the content in a way that's going to benefit their business again after the fact. And, an extra piece of glass here is not going to help me build my business to the empire we want it to be. It's going to be the work that we do imparting to others. Because you know what, though, when you serve and love God and you build up treasure in heaven, there is no amount of treasure here on earth that can amount to the kind of treasure we're going to build up in heaven by doing good works. Now we don't do the good works to build up the treasure. That's a byproduct. We do good works to honor the Lord. And then, by the way, our Father in heaven is so good that he wants to build a treasure storehouse for us in heaven in addition to that, right? And so we're going to go and we're going to honor the Lord, and we're going to serve and love others. And now that I know you so well, it's going to be awesome to kick it with you in a couple months.
Oh, yeah. It's funny because last thing from my end, Gabby, they'll be kind of traveling this time alongside. So it's going to be cool. But she has scoliosis. So she's like, yeah, connect me with Dr. Dave so he can fix my back. She literally, I was like, I'll talk to him. So
I got her, man. Look, I will tell you, I'm planning on bringing my table.
Man, you the man.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
I have to now.
Yeah.
So
exciting.
All right, guys.
All right, well, these last several weeks has truly been special. An opportunity to spend time with you guys.
Yeah.
And thank you for everybody that's been watching, or even if you end up watching in the future.
Absolutely. Reach out to us. We got you.
Yep.
Yes, definitely.
All right. Cornerstone out. Take care, guys.
Love you guys.
Thanks, everybody.